Hey guys, welcome. We're here to discuss the new European Super League and what the implications are. For those who aren't familiar, it was announced over the weekend that there will be a European Super League forming with 20 clubs, rivaled somewhat to the Champions League current model. There will be 15 staple clubs, 12 of which have been announced, the likes of Man City, Real Madrid, so forth and so on, with 3 more founding club announced, and then 5 rotational clubs coming each year. There's been a lot of chat about this over the weekend. We've seen players come out from Ander Herrera. We've seen reporters, Grant Wall, come out, and there's a lot of chat about what's going on and what all of this means. I think looking at it from a European and football or soccer perspective is really important. I'm also curious to discuss it from a U.S. sports perspective. What does this mean for NCAA? What does this mean for different conferences in collegiate sports? So I wanted to have an open conversation about it and have some great guests to kind of chat through it. So I'll introduce the team. Again, I'm Dan Bravato, the president of 76 Capital Sports Advisory. With me, I have Alejandra Bedoya. Alejandra Bedoya is the co-chair of the 76 Capital Athlete Venture Group, as well as the captain of the Philadelphia Union of the Major League Soccer League, and as well as a former U.S. men's national team player. Alejandro has played overseas in a number of the leagues over in Europe specifically, so we're really excited to get his perspective, as well as Chris Yortsos, who's our managing director of sports and esports here at 76. Chris is also a big soccer and football fan, so excited to get his thoughts from the business side. But yeah, open to having a really cool conversation here. And I'll kick it to Ali. Let's get some initial thoughts here and just kind of start the conversation of what your initial reaction was.
Yeah, oof. I mean, I think the rumors have been swirling for, I think the past couple of years surrounding the Super League. For me, my initial thoughts when I was watching the Premier League yesterday morning at the hotel were just like, I can't believe this is happening. I think it's obviously a complete money grab. This is greed at its worst. And I think it's just, a lot of these clubs have American owners, and not that I'm against everything, but I think it's just importing the worst aspects of American sports into Europe and kind of destroying what makes European soccer and those in the Champions League so great and admired by folks all over the world. I think a lot of it, the teams that qualify into Champions League is typically based on merit, how you perform. And this Super League is taken, so to speak, the richest clubs in the world together. And even clubs like Tottenham and Arsenal, they're not even in qualifying for Europa League at this point, and they're advocating themselves as elite clubs and forming this Super League. And I think it's just going to end up destroying, the football pyramid over in Europe. I don't like it at all. I'm just being honest, and I think let's see how this fares out. I also think that it could be, I guess, from a business standpoint, a negotiating move, because I know these clubs have all been kind of wanting a bigger revenue share from the Champions League, from UEFA, and this could, it's all there's a lot of moving parts now. I just recently seen, right before I came on this call, UEFA come out with their proposal, of expanding the Champions League from 32 to 36 clubs, and those 4 extra teams would encompass some of these elite clubs that maybe don't qualify for Champions League, but they'll get their spots guaranteed to be part of Champions League. So a lot of moving parts here, but initially my initial reaction was I do not like this at all.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I was reading an article earlier. Basically, they're saying all the founding members are going to get $400 million, which is 4 times what the 2020 Champions League winner got. So again, obviously the money coming in is going to come from a bevy of places, including media rights, sponsorship dollars, all these other things. But that's a big number if you're a club, and as they say, the rich get richer. So I'm curious.
I think Barcelona loves to see that number because that will hopefully let them keep Messi.
Yeah, they can only pay him for 3 more years with that much money, unfortunately. But I'm curious, having played for some of the smaller clubs in Europe, what does this mean for you as a player of, having Europa and Champions League as an opportunity? What do you see if you're one of the smaller clubs and one of the players on the smaller clubs?
I think that's the allure of these European competitions, right? You get to, you get the David versus Goliath type scenarios. You, as a smaller club that gets into those qualifying spots and you make it into those competitions, you get to compete against the best. And you're now taking that away for these elite clubs. And it's just, it just waters it down. And I think that's, you can talk about what's fair, what's not, but at the end of the day, it's just all about money, really. And it sucks. I think people love as fans to follow their local clubs, the smaller teams. Ajax isn't part of it, which historically is a massive club, and I think people enjoyed seeing the young talent at Ajax giving it to Real Madrid. And you see the likes of Leicester winning the English Premier League. You have teams like that on a smaller level that are able to compete against the big boys. And now they're trying to get out of it and just rake in more money.
Yep, no doubt. Chris, why don't you give us your quick thoughts as a Tottenham supporter here? What are you feeling?
Yeah, I agree with what Ali said, and Dan, I know you and I have talked about this before. It's tough. I mean, I certainly don't have the bona fides that Ali has, but I've been watching soccer. I've been a huge European soccer fan my whole life, and for me, this is more of what Ali said, that kind of the tail wagging the dog, right? Soccer has historically been about open competition and sporting merit. And now that script has been flipped a little bit, where revenue is kind of driving, the decisions of these upper echelon teams. And Dan, I know you mentioned, $400 million goes to each of the founding clubs, which is 4 times what Champions League winners have gotten in the past. But how that trickles down to some of these other clubs in these leagues, think about it. With broadcasters are going to start to pull some of the deals that they had, and what that means for some of these smaller clubs, they can't substantiate. And so now the Premier League, which is all about promotion and relegation, and you're with your club for years and years and years, in the hopes that at some point you can make Europa and then you can make Champions League. That system is now gone, and you take away some of the passion that comes with leagues like Premier League. And so I think it's a crucial blow. Alejandro mentioned that Champions League was already in discussions to revamp its current format from 32 to 36. They were supposed to unveil that today, and that was supposed to appease the likes of the bigger clubs, who felt that they should be getting more revenue commensurate with their status. And now with them basically closing off all competition and walling themselves off from the rest of these clubs, to me, it's what Ollie said. It's a lot of the American systems that are being transposed over into Europe. And when you have owners from, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, who have American roots, they're taking some of their systems and applying it over there. And I think, a lot of these teams are coming out of COVID and have been dealt significant blows from a revenue perspective. And when you get the lure of, dollars in front of you, it's hard to say no. And we've mentioned, the lucrative financial distribution that comes with joining this league. I just think it waters down soccer as a whole, as Alejandro mentioned. And for me, there's something very special about European soccer that I think is going to go away if this Super League is realized. I also think that there are impediments, with people like Alejandro and Ander Herrera speaking up. It's great to hear voices like this that oppose. And, you look at teams like Barcelona and Real Madrid. I mean, these are fan-supported clubs, and a lot of fans have come out against the Super League. So I think that there are going to be impediments there. UEFA and FIFA have also mentioned that they're going to be revoking player status for World Cups and things of that nature. And so we'll see if those are empty threats. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that what Alejandro said is true, that this is merely a negotiating tactic, because I think that the system of European soccer, as I've known it my whole life, is kind of crumbling with the formation of this new Super League. I hate to be hyperbolic and dramatic, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think you hit on something that's really interesting there, and it's kind of the decimation of the smaller clubs, because obviously, you look at the revenue for Premier League as an example, which is, heralded as one of the most competitive clubs in the entire competitive leagues in the entire world in terms of the parity. And you have a club, at the bottom of the table, and you have a Man City, Liverpool. And if these guys are just adding to their bottom line by this new league that these smaller clubs can't get into, that disparity is going to look, and I am a La Liga fan, but I hate to say it, but that disparity is going to look a lot more like Real Madrid playing someone at the bottom of the La Liga table versus Leicester, who Ollie brought up kind of having a chance at winning the Premier League there. So, yeah, I agree. I think this is a really interesting idea and concept that is clearly a very American-centric idea that is making its way into Europe. And agreed completely with the beauty of what is European football and Champions League and all of that kind of taking a hit from what's happening here. But yeah, I think one of the other things I'm curious about is, Ollie, from a player's perspective, when you see that $400 million number as a player, as Kevin De Bruyne, who just renegotiated his contract with Man City, are you all of a sudden saying, wait a minute, I'm adding more games, I'm adding more revenue to a club, should my compensation now all of a sudden skyrocket?
Yeah, I guess as a player you would think that way, but from my understanding, from reading the press release, the Super League has put in a salary cap. If I'm correct, Chris, you can, if I'm wrong, but you can confirm that for me. But so I mean, you can say that you want a larger share of that revenue coming in, but I'm not so sure if that's feasible with the salary cap, right? So that's again the American kind of sports setup taking place over in Europe, and obviously the pandemic has exacerbated the inequities, and everybody's suffered, but obviously the smaller clubs have suffered even greater, right? But I think, yeah, I don't know how much, I think all these elite clubs, they had already had a competitive advantage and a financial advantage. They already shared a lot more the revenues beforehand, and now they just want that much more. So this competitive advantage that they're trying to gain financially is just, for me, it's kind of despicable. I think I don't like it, even as a player, player for these clubs. And Chris mentioned the fact that some of these players might be sanctioned by not being allowed to play at the Euros or international competition. We talk again about how that's fair or unfair, because I think most of these players have been oblivious to these behind the scenes kind of talks. These are done by the ownership groups. So I don't know how that's fair to the players, so to speak. But like I said, I think this is all just going to go back and forth. This is just the very beginning. It's going to get uglier, and we'll see where it goes from here. But I'd like to think it's some type of negotiating tactic where UEFA is going to have to change its format completely, and they'll talk numbers and see how they break it down, and then how much all these elite clubs will be getting and whatnot.
What do you think from with the corruption scandals we've seen in the past with FIFA that surely trickled into UEFA in some component or another? Do you think this is kind of somewhat, again, a money grab, but also a pushback on that, where the clubs are going to have the governance of all of this and we don't have those middlemen anymore? Or do you think that will still potentially exist?
You want me to answer that, or Chris? I mean, I think, unfortunately, in our game, it's been there's been wild corruption, involved at every facet of it, from grassroots even to the top. And it's the unfortunate thing, right? And, it's interesting for me on the outside, why PSG isn't one of those clubs. But, they're probably worried about that if the FIFA clamps down on their on the Qatar's hopes of hosting the World Cup, right? Because we know how beIN Sports has the rights to a lot of these games and whatnot. So, it's all encompassing, really. And it's a shame because UEFA, FIFA, all these federations, many of these federations and clubs have been at the epicenter of corruption. And it's something that unfortunately is probably still running rampant in our game, unfortunately. I guess you just got to keep following the money trails, right?
So one topic that I want to discuss, because I think it's relevant here, is what do we do with, or what if you're the NCAA, and I feel, I'm not going to equate the NCAA to Champions League or UEFA, but if I'm Duke, if I'm UNC, if I'm Kansas, and I see what's happening right now, how do you think that trickles down to, there being a super conference and March Madness no longer existing anymore because the individual schools are going to take on this, and you have the founding members being, the Dukes, the North Carolinas, the USCs, I'll throw Chris Abo in there, and so forth and so on. Where do you think, are they looking at this and saying we should explore this? I'm curious, Chris, to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, the super conference is something that, when I was, whatever it was, 10 years ago, that it was contemplated that the Pac-12 were going to absorb Texas and Oklahoma and carry on with basically you'd have 5 super conferences, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, Big 12, and the Pac-12. And they would carry on as is. Again, I come at it from the approach that, the reason the Pac-12 is what it is because you have parity, because you have representation from all of these other schools. When you when you simply are just advocating for the big dogs, and you don't have the Boise States of the world, you don't have, the UConns of the world, who come about and can take the nation by storm, then you lose a little bit of what the sport is all about. When all you have are just those upper echelon teams, in my opinion, that you sacrifice a little bit of the glimmer and the spark of what makes things like college football and European soccer, for that matter, so special. Is you have these, the ability of these Davids to go against Goliath, and when you just have all Goliaths, to me, you lose that luster. So I'm approaching it less from a business stance and more from the personal opinion that I have about that, which I think you need that parity, and you need those smaller schools, you need those smaller programs, and give them a chance so that you can have a Leicester that has a 500-1 chance to win the Premier League. You have Leeds United, a couple of years ago, they were in the championship, the Division II for the Premier League, and then they get promoted, and Amazon does a whole series about them, and now they're fighting for Europa League. And if you strip that out and you just focus on the top teams, it becomes something different. And for my viewing experience, it's lesser than when you remove some of those smaller clubs. And I think that it will take a hit as a whole. And I think that can be manifested across the collegiate sports environment as well. When you're just focusing on the Dukes, North Carolinas, or in football, your Alabamas, your Texases, then you lose the luster of college athletics, in my opinion.
Definitely. I'm curious to get everyone's last thoughts here as we wrap this. Any closing thoughts? You got a quick tidbit, something you didn't cover? I'm curious to get those. Ollie, if you want to kick that off, if you have anything that either something we didn't talk about or something you just want to reiterate.
No, I think just to kind of go off of what Chris just said about the NCAA and stuff like that. I guess a lot of American fans could be watching this, and I can equate what's happening to like what you mentioned. If the March Madness were to go away and the UNC, Kentucky, Duke came together and said, we're just going to create our own super tourney, but it goes back to meritocracy, kind of where I complain about like Arsenal and Tottenham this year. They're not going to qualify for Champions League, and they might not even qualify for Europa League, and this year, UNC weren't at their best. Duke wasn't at their best, and it takes away from, as a fan, that competitive nature that you want to see, that you strive for, seeing the underdogs beat the big boys and this and that. I think, March Madness, that's what's so beautiful about it, right? You get a Steph Curry, a Davidson, making a run in the tournament and beating some of the big teams. And that's what fans like to see is a merit-based competition where, even though they already have a competitive advantage, you can say the same with UNC, Duke, and Kentucky with their boosters and all this stuff, that they're able to recruit better players and have the financial means and things like that, that you can still compete with other teams. I just think as a fan, it gets boring if you just want to see, if you're just going to see Man City versus Man United every time. You want to see, sometimes. It might not be the prettiest soccer, but Arsenal just tied Burnley at home 1-1 in the last minute yesterday. I don't have much to add, I guess, other than I do not like this Super League idea, and I've never quite seen kind of like the monolithic sentiment on social media or everywhere around with the reaction to the Super League, and I think that says a lot.
I love that. I think that's spot on. And your comparison to, what Duke and UNC did this year in the tournament, or lack thereof showing up at the tournament because they didn't. I think it's a great point of, you're just resting on your laurels if City doesn't have to perform well and all of a sudden they're guaranteed this, $400 million check just for being City. It's not as fun as it used to be. Chris, what do you got for us?
I was going to flip it back to you, Dan. I'm curious. You've asked mine and Ollie's opinions. What do you think of this new Super League formation?
Well, as a storied front-runner fan, as I am supporting Real Madrid and Man City, my initial thought was, this is really interesting. I get to see City play United more frequently outside of just the Premier League. I get to City play Real. And then I kind of realized that it's not the same, as a City fan and having watched them over the past couple of years since working there. We look, Chris is a Tottenham supporter, and we've had many debates of, why would you support Tottenham? I'm going to support City because I'm going to win. I'm going to win the Premier League. I'm going to win Champions League. And then Tottenham, ends up going to the Champions League final and City doesn't. And it's kind of those moments that you're losing that. I lost that experience as a fan because I wouldn't have had that. And I would have been, theoretically right that, yes, my team having more means will always beat your team. And to Ollie's point of meritocracy, you eliminate that. And you eliminate what is allegedly the American dream of being able to have that come up story and having it to build. You don't get that. You're just getting the top of the top, which is a very American model. And it does. It kind of takes away the beauty of what is European football. And as a European football fan, I think we're all guilty of having our secondary teams, whether that's, I like Athletic Bilbao in Spain, right? And are they ever going to win Champions League? Probably not. Will they even win La Liga? Probably not. But it's still fun to have that rooting interest and follow those players and follow those stories. And I think you lose that at a high level when you go for something like this. And I do think it's a very Americanized model being integrated into what I consider to be the most beautiful and probably my favorite sport in the entire world.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've had those debates all the time, and there's something special when your team, in my case Tottenham, when they do make Champions League. You've been with them for so many years, and you've gone through the ups and downs. They've finished 12th, they finished 7th, they finished 8th, now they finished 2nd, and to me there's something special about that. And when you just have the top 12 just recirculating and, the way that this new Super League is intended, you're going to lose a lot of that. And I think that's something that isn't being considered to the level that I think these top 12 or 15 teams are contemplating. Is you're not going to get the support of fans globally that we see for the Premier League, for La Liga, for Serie A, and so on and so forth. So I think it's going to be interesting. I also think, what another interesting component is, if this does continue, what's the next domino to fall? PSG, Bayern, what is this going to look like for them? And as they try to round out the top 20, who are going to be those teams that fill in? So I hope it doesn't happen. I hope ultimately, to Ollie's point, this is a negotiating tactic that ultimately gets Champions League to a place that everyone's a little bit happier with. But cynically, it seems like it's getting far enough along to the point where this is slowly starting to become a reality. So yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. Time will tell. But it's great to hear your guys' opinions on this.
Yeah, super excited to see where this plays out. I mean, we've already, as we mentioned, we've seen players come out, we've seen governing bodies come out, we've seen Bayern and Borussia Dortmund both come out and say they're not doing this. So it's super interesting. So yeah, we'll stay tuned, see what's happening. Appreciate you guys taking the time to jump in and have this conversation. Some really unique and impressive backgrounds and perspectives here. So hopefully we're going to be doing more of these little quick hits as the sports business world continues to give us amazing stories like this. And we'll be giving our takes, and feel free, any comments, questions you guys have, happy to hear them and see how we can make these more informative and better moving forward. So thanks everybody for checking this out, and looking forward to our next one.